It seems like the world these days is a never-ending crisis. One of the latest, a 7.2 earthquake in Haiti that ravaged a country still recovering from another deadly earthquake a decade ago. The death toll now creeping into the thousands, and for those left alive, desperate need.
A lot of medicine is needed, assistance from the authorities, help from the international community, from the NGOs.
Then we turn to the crisis in Afghanistan, that country falling to the Taliban swiftly after the withdrawal of American troops.
We call on the international community to extend all possible support to those who may be at imminent risk.
Now, as terrified Afghanis attempt to flee their country, more help is needed for the refugees, both in that country and in the U.S. We look at what's being done to help. And in a dangerous and frightening world, we can look to a fictional world for help.
Engage.
The son of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry talks about his father's vision of a world of diversity, inclusiveness, and positivity. Fox 11 News In Depth starts right now. Hello, everyone. I'm Hal Eisner. The tragedy in Haiti seems unending, shattered by a powerful earthquake and then drenched by an intense storm just days later. The misery in that country is almost inconceivable, but there are organizations that are doing their very best to try to bring aid to the areas hardest hit by the disasters. Joining us now, Tjada McKenna, who's with Mercy Corps, and Ann Lee, who is the CEO of CORE, and CORE stands for the Community, let me get this right, CORE stands for Community Organized Relief Effort. I've said that so many times, it should be ingrained in my mind. Both of you are doing noble work right now, and let me point out, Ann is in Haiti on the ground, and let's start with Ann, because I want to get an idea of what's going on where you are. First of all, where are you? What's happening around you?
Right now I'm in Port-au-Prince, and we have a team of about 30 out in several areas in the south. They've been there since, within the first 12 hours since we've had our local organization, DPHRO, on the ground since the earthquake of 2010.
Yeah, I remember you were very involved in that. How is this different from that?
It's been really different in terms of just the layered impacts. We have COVID, we've been doing vaccinations, and then this hit. On top of that, we have the hurricane. But even before that, we've been dealing with such a huge amount of malnutrition, food insecurity, and just a much lower level of wealth here. And then just to kind of top it all off, we have the insecurity that's been really, really hindering some of the assistance getting out there to those areas.
Before we get to Tjada, let me just ask you, Ann, what is CORE's role? And how does that play out with other organizations like Mercy Corps that are on the ground as well, doing whatever they're doing there in that area?
Well, we love partnerships, and we've been working on the ground with the Ministry of Health, with the Department of Civil Protection, and we really are, Haitian-led. Our team has been here. Our Haitian team has been responding to actually hurricanes in the U.S. and in the Bahamas. So they're extremely capable, and they are awesome, and they've been out there, and, there's a lot of organizations that all come out. What's great is that it's very different from 2010 in that, you don't have this absolute lack of coordination and all this craziness with 200 different organizations that are dropping down all at one time. The government has been really, really good about making sure that everyone is coordinated, that you just don't come down and do whatever you want. And so there's a lot of sort of inter-coordination.
Tjada, let's talk about Mercy Corps for a minute, and what are you doing down there? What's your organization trying to accomplish?
So Mercy Corps, we also have been in Haiti since 2010, and we have a team of 75 staff full-time on the ground. More than 60 of them are Haitian, and we actually had about 19 people based in Nipe, which is the epicenter of the Haitian earthquake. And so a lot of our work in Haiti has been helping to lift communities out of poverty, working with small businesses, entrepreneurs, and also farmers. And this area where the earthquake hit is heavily agricultural. It's hillside rain-fed agriculture. We also do a lot of work with youth, building skills for youth, and working deep in communities, providing water, and also just community training the communities on how to hold their officials and those of us beholden to them accountable.
We're seeing the images on TV. We're seeing the destruction and we're hearing about the deaths and the injuries. There are Haitians who live in Los Angeles and Southern California. What would you say to them about what's happening back there in Haiti?
You know, a colleague of mine who's based in Nice soon after the earthquake said, everywhere is agony. This, you know, the devastation, we've been working in one community and we estimate that 90% of the homes have been damaged and over 50% fully destroyed. And the destruction has also hit public buildings and churches and other places that would normally be shelters. What I would say is, as in almost all disasters, the first point of contact and assistance are neighbors. And we have seen and heard of heroic stories of neighbors and communities really stepping up to help themselves out while the rest of us get there with supplies and other things. We believe that we're going to get people the emergency stuff, the supplies they need, like hygiene kits, water purification tablets, shelter materials, tarps, construction materials. But we also are looking to provide cash and watching the local economy to make sure that there are things on the shelves to restock, because we'd rather be getting supplies locally and procuring them where we can to beef up the local community. So we're really watching.
And let's go back to Ann, because she's on the ground there. Ann, what are you seeing with your own eyes? What are you seeing over there? And what are some of the things you can relay to us back here in Southern California that maybe we're not seeing in the news footage?
There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of frustration that the assistance isn't coming down fast enough into all these areas. There's a lot of areas that people have converged to that are easily accessible, but there's so many other smaller towns that always get left out, who are not getting the attention and the assistance that they need. And for us, it's so important. And what I would like for people to know is that these folk are they're not victims, they're survivors. And it is so important to not just look at the short-term assistance models, but really focus on how do we make this community, make these neighborhoods, make the institutions, the health system, the government institutions, how do we make them stronger from within? Let's focus on not just right now, but we need so much attention when the newscasts and the coverage kind of goes away in the next few weeks.
You know, Tjada pointed out that a colleague of hers said everywhere you turn there's agony. You've seen that? You've seen that, Ann?
Definitely. I mean, people are so incredibly already, hungry with lack of food. And then on top of that, you have the insecurity. And then, I mean, it's just so much pain that's out there. And for us, it's really, really difficult, because this isn't just, people from another place. These are our staff and their family members. We have so many of our staff who have their family members affected that are bringing home to their family members assistance. So for us, it is part of the family. And
very briefly, each of you, 10 seconds. How can we help? Let me just start with Ann, and then we'll go to Tjada. Go ahead, Ann.
Again, I want to push out that do not lose faith in Haiti. You have to keep providing support and assistance, not just in these first critical periods, but in the longer periods. We feel very strongly to support our other local partners, give to us, give to other organizations, but do not lose hope, and don't look away 2 weeks from now.
All right, Ann. Tjada, hang on a second. Ann, thanks for being with us. I know you're busy down there in Haiti. It is very nice of you to take a few minutes to talk to us. Be safe, and we'll talk to you when you get back. We've got a couple of websites for those who'd like to help out with donations. CorResponse.org and mercycorps.org/donate is where you'd want to go. Coming up next on Fox 11 News in Depth, we're back with Tjada Doyen McKenna to talk about Mercy Corps' work to help the people fleeing the political chaos in Afghanistan. That's next. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Fox 11 News in Depth. I'm Hal Eisner, and let's go back to Tjada Doyen McKenna, who's with Mercy Corps. And I want to pick up where we left off in the last segment about Haiti, kind of the bottom line for you with regard to what's being done down there and what people can do to help. Just a short answer on that, please.
Yeah, I will echo what Ann said. Donate, donate, donate. Keep them in mind. And I think you've already or will show our website, www.mercycorps.org.
All right, great. Thank you so much. You know, there is another global hotspot that's dealing with extreme disruption right now. The fall of Afghanistan happened shockingly fast, leaving chaos in its wake. The people of that country struggling to figure out what happens next. And the people who fought in that conflict over 20 years and their loved ones trying to process what it all means. I spoke with some of them last week.
Some of the people that I served with are some of the best people.
Robert Hamm served 7 years in the Army, one of those years in Afghanistan, a year filled with good intentions.
We built hospitals, we built schools, we tried to treat the people with as much respect as possible, and yet war is war. It's hell. It's horrible.
He lost 13 fellow soldiers during combat that he's thinking about as he watches the end of the Afghanistan war. He has a tattoo on his arm to remember all 13 and a bracelet for 2 of them.
It's heart-wrenching at the same time that I'm glad that we're pulling our people out. It seems like it was a no-win situation.
Her son, Lance Corporal Rick Santani, died during a road attack 10 days before his 20th birthday.
His entire purpose in his mind was to free America from having another 9/11.
But the price of war is the loss of life. And to Santani's mom, who also wears a tattoo to remember her son.
It's a great cost to those of us that are left behind.
Tjada, Doy, and McKenna, you've got people in Mercy Corps over in Afghanistan. They've been there since 1986, I think it is. What are they doing over there? How safe are they? Are you getting them out? What's going on?
Yes, the vast majority of our staff are local Afghan nationals, and they are there, and we're working with them to just make sure that they remain safe until it is safe to continue to operate. But they are eager to go back to helping their community because they know it's the Afghan civilians who are really facing the brunt of this.
Clearly, this is a fast-changing situation, and we're taping this, and so it could be that between now that we're taping and the time that this airs, things may have changed somewhat. But how concerned are you about the people that are over there that aren't getting out real fast?
You know, we're concerned. Afghanistan was one of the big humanitarian catastrophes in the world already before this happened, especially women and children bearing the brunt of the uncertainty and living without access to basic services like electricity and clean water and healthcare. And now you have many more people who've been internally displaced as they've been in movement around Afghanistan and trying to go to safety. So we're really concerned about the people of Afghanistan and really wanting and trying to get back to assisting them as quickly as possible.
And so much concern has been aimed at the women of Afghanistan. What can you tell us?
You know, the women and girls, it's a very uncertain future. You know, the Taliban is saying very reassuring words right now. But we have, you know, there's a history there. And there are a lot of people, women and girls who've been thriving and have really stood up in society and are looking to resume that. So we are watching and hoping for the best and waiting to see what we can do to help that. What
are the communications like between here and there with the folks that you have on the ground?
You know, we are in regular contact with our folks on the ground, and people are safe. We're in what we call hibernation mode. You know, there is some movement in our offices, but we've just asked our staff to really stay safe and take care of their families until we establish the appropriate protocols to keep moving with our work.
And so that hibernation mode is basically sheltering in place, right?
Yes, yes.
And so that must be very difficult. And so to those who are here in this country, who may know people in that country, what do you say to them?
We're saying, you know, let's work with our lawmakers. Let's pressure people to make sure that we still provide long-term humanitarian assistance to the civilians of Afghanistan, that the UN stays in the country, and that humanitarian organizations like ours are given freedom to operate, and that the powers that be in Afghanistan also follow appropriate international humanitarian law to support the people there.
All right. Well, we wish you and all the folks over there with Mercy Corps all the best. And we know it's a very dangerous situation. And we hope you'll check back with us and let us know exactly what's going on over there. And all the best.
It'll be our pleasure. Thanks for your interest in Mercy Corps.
And let's take a look at that website one more time. It is, go ahead.
www.mercycorps.org, MERCYCORPS.
All right, very good. Thank you so much, Tjada. And coming up next on Fox 11 News In Depth, we boldly go where many have gone before, to the science fiction world that has been portrayed in movies, TV, and animated series. That is, of course, Star Trek. We talk to creator Gene Roddenberry's son right after this. We'll be right back. This year, 2021, is the year that Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry would have turned 100 years old. It's also the 55th year of the franchise that started as a groundbreaking science fiction show that was back in 1966 and then was spun off into 7 TV series, 2 animated series, and 15 films, at least so far. His son, Rod, is now carrying on his father's legacy and has devoted the centennial year to a project called Think Trek.
Elite team. We're not really elite.
Rod, Think Trek. Nice to see you. And I'm so excited about this because I have some connects to Star Trek we'll talk about. But first of all,
right.
Your dad's 100th year. What's this all about, and what is Think Trek?
Star Trek has permeated culture for the past 55 years, as you mentioned. And, my father was an incredible man, and that's not coming from just a son who loves him. That's coming from a son who's gone back and looked at his history. He was a bomber pilot in World War II, flying 80 some odd missions in the South Pacific. He then became a transcontinental pilot, flying from Johannesburg to New York. And on a flight deadheading, they crashed in the Syrian desert. And he was one of half the survivors and helped lead people to safety. After that, he hung up his wings and joined the LAPD and rose to the rank of sergeant and started writing speeches for the chief of police. And then he got interested in entertainment, Dragnet and shows like that, started asking him for stories, and he realized that he could do more with that. He could actually make more money, and he could get his ideas out there. And then thanks to Lucille Ball, a number of years later, Star Trek came on the air.
That's remarkable. That is quite the history. And I got to tell you, I mean, it is amazing to think of what your dad accomplished with his vision. And so as you look back and you reflect and you celebrate this year, look back at yourself, and were you part of the Star Trek sort of environment in your home? Did you kind of come along a little later to the idea?
I certainly came along much later. My father didn't really bring Star Trek home. He really had 2 lives. I knew what it was, but I was young. I was into Starsky and Hutch and Adam 12 and Knight Rider, and really became a preteen and started rebelling against my father and mother, and anything they said, I pretty much did the opposite. But sadly, it wasn't until he passed away when I was 17 that I began to sort of open my ears and pay attention. And I started hearing the fans telling me these stories about how Star Trek touched them, it inspired them, it allowed them to not just believe in a better future, but to see beyond what they thought were their perceived limitations. And so the stories were incredible. And I had no idea a TV show could do this. And I've been very proud of it. And I've dedicated my life to trying to carry on the values and ideals in Star Trek in everything that I do.
As we look at some of these clips of the show, and it always struck me that this was the most amazing ensemble that I had ever seen. And you just knew them. And you knew what they would say. You could almost guess what Doc would say in response to Spock. And I guess, it sort of takes me to the place of, when we look at Star Trek and what your dad did and what will go on in the future and all the different people that have played captains and admirals and all of that, well, what is this legacy? I mean, it's extraordinary.
It really comes from, the history I just told you of my father. He had the opportunity to travel the world back when many didn't, and he explored cultures. He met people who had different views on the world. He really got sort of a breadth of what humanity was. He saw the ugliness and the beauty, and I think that gave him the perspective to look 100 years, 200, 300 years in the future and say, listen, if we get our act together, we can be something incredible.
And let me just jump in real quick. Let me just jump in real quick because he did.
Please.
There were some incredible moments. Let's talk about that famous kiss with the captain
Absolutely.
and Uhura. And that was like the first. Well, it wasn't the first intergalactic kiss on Star Trek, but certainly the first interracial one, and that made a lot of noise.
Yeah, I mean, and he had a Japanese officer on the bridge just 25 years after, I think about 25, something like that, World War II. He had a Russian on the bridge when Cold War tensions were pretty high. He was able to see that this is all foolish things that we're doing right now, this bickering. And he used to compare humanity to being a child in our adolescence, and all children fight. And we are going to get through this, and we are going to be better because of it.
All right, let me ask you real quickly. Hashtag Talk Track. You got about 15 seconds. What is that?
Talk Trek is basically, we've got a lot of the fans out there and a lot of the celebrities. We found 100 quotes from my father. We started 100 days before his birthday, and we got these celebrities to just repeat these quotes, and they're really in-depth and beautiful.
I believe in humanity. We are an incredible species. We're still just a child creature. We're still being nasty to each other, and all children go through those phases. We're growing up.
And we've got a podcast called Quoting Gene Roddenberry, where we dig deep into these quotes. Are they relevant? When were they relevant? Are they relevant today? And will they be relevant in the future?
All right, Rod Roddenberry, really good to talk to you. I've enjoyed you very much. And I'll just say I was actually on a Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode once, and it was out of this world. Nice to see you.
Nice.
We'll be back
Nice
with
to
more
see you.
on Fox 11 News in Depth right after this. Don't go away. And finally, if you haven't already checked out my podcast, please do. It's called What the Hell, and it's wherever you subscribe to podcasts, or just go to whatthehellpodcast.com. That's it for this week's Fox 11 News in Depth. Thanks for joining us. We'll leave you with some of those inspiring quotes from Gene Roddenberry. Let's talk Trek and have a great week, everybody. See you next time.
Whatever the point of this universe, you are a legitimate part of it. And since you are a part of all that it is, a part of its purpose, there is more than this brief speck of existence.
You are just a visitor here in this time and this place, a traveler through it. What a difference that makes. As a traveler here, it no longer crushes you that this world is not always fair or orderly.